Thank you very much. I want to thank the House for the invitation to speak here and apologise to the person I heard outside saying they were looking forward to hearing a debate on artificial insemination. If you just consider how the AI revolution has already impacted on your daily life, do you use a Google search on a daily basis for your study or your work? Do you search and connect to people on social networks like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, using AI algorithms to do this? Do you play video games? Do you stream HD movies on Netflix? You're all students, I'm sure you do. You're using AI algorithms already. They're everywhere, okay? And we're already benefiting from them. And the thing is that we want to continue benefiting from them and see them do an awful lot more good. We want to see how they can deliver faster and better medical diagnosis so that we can improve the lives of people across the world. We want to see safer roads and infrastructures where traffic can interact with demand, and we can see how traffic lights can in some way shun traffic around our cities much more efficiently, and cars can ultimately maybe drive themselves. We want to see more efficient use of natural resources so we can begin to impact on climate change. Of course we want to see all these things, and of course we're fearful of them too, because they do bring with them a huge amount of challenges to our own human race. But it's that inherent challenge that we should not be afraid of, because of Darwinian evolution, we became farmers, we developed implements, we developed tools, we constantly adapted. We improved ourselves for future generations, and we constantly adapted to the new circumstances we found ourselves in, and we continuously improved. People like Christopher Columbus, the Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, they all put their own lives at risk in order to achieve new great findings for future generations, and they took personal risks to make those things happen. And yet the argument against AI is slightly ridiculous. It's the equivalent of asking Neil Armstrong, could you step away from the rocket? We're afraid of what you might find. But I don't want to take it too flippantly, because a lot of scientists do debate this topic, and it is a topic that should be debated like it is here tonight. Stephen Hawking was already mentioned. He was very fearful that they might find the God particle when they started the CERN work with the Hadron Collider. So he was wrong on that. The universe didn't end. Okay? So there's no need to worry about everything that a scientist says. We're not always right, we're not always wrong. It's somewhere in the middle. Okay? AI offers us an opportunity to make our contribution to the advancement of humanity. It expands our ability to improve people's lives. It's not something we should be afraid of. It's something that should be held and used for the benefit of all. Ultimately, it stands in the hands of those who use it, not AI itself. Fear of the unknown is totally normal. Okay? When the telephone was initially invented, Western Union had an internal memo, and they said the telephone has far too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us. 1876. Or in the 1920s, the wireless music box, what we now know as the radio, has no imaginable commercial value. Who would pay for a message sent to nobody in particular? These are all examples of course, we were fearful of these new things, but they ultimately had a positive effect on our lives. Ultimately, AI research is being applied to very, very complex, large amounts of data. And by applying a very efficient AI algorithm and using a certain amount of computer hardware, of course, we can seem to do very, very complex things. To the human mind, it seems almost magical. But really, you could probably do it on the back of an envelope mathematically if you had enough time and enough resources. It's just numbers. Okay? Recent advances in deep learning have shown great promise in areas like pattern matching, image processing, natural language processing. Okay? But again, it's very, very primitive, and it's not going to revolutionize our world in any great extent unless it's applied to certain problems, like medical imaging maybe, for diagnosis of particular tumours. Ultimately, to make any of these things work, you need two things. You need a computer programmer who has some background in AI, and you need some domain-specific knowledge. That combination, that human influence, is going to always be needed. Okay? If there's going to be something wrong done with AI or something malicious, it's going to be in their hands that it's done, not AI itself. If we think about AI and how advanced it has become, and compare it to a human being, is it able to see? Is it able to hear? Is it able to taste? Is it able to smell and touch? Our senses are far more advanced than AI has ever become, okay, or ever is likely to become in the immediate future. Not a hope. How do we maintain relationships as human beings? How complex have they become? How do we cope with humour, satire, sarcasm? AI, again, is very, very limited in all those areas. Again, it exists merely within a set of parameters that are determined by a designer and a programmer. In reality, AI is simply only in its infancy. So we have nothing to fear and everything to gain. By increasing research in AI, we can begin to apply it to some of our greatest problems. We can start to address some of the challenges that currently exist in society. One of the common criticisms that will be laid out here tonight, I'm sure by many of the opposition speakers, is that it will displace lots of jobs. And if you have a mundane, run-of-the-mill job, yes, it probably will be replaced by an AI device at some stage in the future, maybe over the next coming decades. But we should look at that as an opportunity. It's happened in every other revolution, this is the Industrial Revolution, every other revolution up till now. We shouldn't look at it as a threat. Of course, it's going to be really difficult on the people affected, but it does give us more human capital to start addressing some of our other problems. Let's just put this in perspective. We're here debating AI. Is it really the grand world problem we should be addressing? Think about all the human capital and capabilities we can free up with AI so that we can address some of the really, really big challenges. Let's just put it in perspective when we say 22,000 children die every day due to poverty. 1 in 3 live without adequate shelter. 1 in 5 have no access to safe water, and 1 in 7 have no access to health services. That's the kind of problem we should be addressing and debating with AI in perspective, and how we can address these. So they're the challenges, and we shouldn't demonize AI, we should just look at it as another tool that's available in our way of addressing these things. We also need to resist the temptation to overstate our research, and this is a problem in the media, with funding agencies and international league tables, not a hope. This is a problem with a lot of these things. We need to stop overstating our findings and sensationalizing them. We need to outline our findings in realistic, tangible outcomes and set our targets in ways that are meaningful to the public, and not let people be fearful of what we're doing in the back end when we're talking about AI algorithms and what can be done. It might be cold comfort, but one quote to finish will be Albert Einstein. If we knew what we were doing, would we call it research, really? We don't really know where it's going to bring us, but it's a journey that we're all going to take together, and we should look at where we can make it work to our advantage. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and I can now call upon our second guest speaker this evening, Sean, to propose.
Hello everyone, Sean Jukes my name, as you know. I'm a science journalist and I write the odd book. Well, as a journalist, I meant to have a balanced view, but on this particular issue, I've decided that really, on balance, and we've heard many of the things, the benefits that could come from AI, that on balance, that actually, because in this particular case, with this particular technology, there's an existential threat to mankind, and we can't just ignore that. So it's a special case. That might sound to some of you listening as a bit extreme. If I was sitting down there, I'd probably say that's overly dramatic by the sound of it. However, it's not just me saying this, far from it. In the States last year, and now this is an international group, a campaign called the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots was set up. It sounds like something science fiction, but it's very, very serious. It was signed by 1,000 scientists, including many of the leading artificial intelligence researchers. And they sent out an open letter because they were so concerned with what was happening with drones, and drones that are now under human control in the Middle East to attack targets, ISIS targets, other targets. The decisions to kill are currently in human hands. But the next generation of drones could easily have artificial intelligence built in, so that it would make sense then to allow the artificial intelligence to decide on the targets. That surely is an ethical decision for a human. But it shows you that in this particular case, already we're at the stage where we're starting to have to make decisions. Do we want to keep control of this technology that literally will have life and death power over us? I would say no. Now, we've talked about Stephen Hawking. He gets things wrong, but he's a very eminent scientist. We can talk about other scientists that are concerned as well. Stephen Russell, he's one of the pioneers of artificial intelligence. Other people like Elon Musk, who some of you will know from the SpaceX rockets and also from the electric cars, the Tesla cars that are now for sale in Ireland. He's actually putting his own money into campaigns to try and put a brake on artificial intelligence. You also, as a journalist, you have to ask, why did all of these scientists come forward and do something that's not in their own interests? Why would it be in the interests of scientists and researchers, particularly ones in artificial intelligence, to come out and say, this is dangerous, we need to put the brakes on this? Their whole career is built on getting funding in to support that research. It's like a historian saying, you know what, the stuff I do is a load of rubbish, don't bother giving me any funding. It wasn't in their interest to do that. So you know, as somebody in journalism, people who are saying things that is not in their own interest, generally they're doing it, they're saying the truth, they're doing it for a reason. Science magazine, which is one of the top 2, I would say, scientific journals in the world, they have entered the debate and they had a special edition on artificial intelligence. They too highlighted many concerns. So it's certainly not something that's sensationalist. It's certainly not something that's the media likes to talk about. This is a very serious issue. The campaign I mentioned before, they're particularly worried now. There's lots of things that they can worry about in the future. But the reason they did this last year in 2015 is they said, we can't sit on our hands anymore. We have to act now because the technology is there now. We have to do something. These autonomous weapons are causing such concern. You have countries with high-tech military, such as the US, China, Israel, Russia, the UK, lots of them. They're going to start wanting to use drones in all kinds of situations with artificial intelligence. Why? Because we all know from politics, if you put machines onto the battlefield, then you don't have humans coming home in a box, like Vietnam, which stopped the Vietnam War, all of those images of people coming home. Okay? So you allow machines to do your work.
Okay. For human history from millennia, we have went to war over everything and that. Now we have a realistic possibility that parents won't have to bury their son when he comes home from the peacekeeping mission in Somalia. Why is that a bad thing?
It's a bad thing possibly because it makes the decision to go to war a lot easier. If I'm the Prime Minister, I can easily send 20,000 robots to war. Who cares? They're not going to die, okay? So it might make that decision a lot easier. Just a quick overview, if you like, of AI. I won't talk a lot about this, but we know that the scientific father is Alan Turing. I thought it'd be nice to mention that there's a connection with Trinity there, believe it or not, with Turing. Some of you might know, some of you might not know. His mother was called Ethel Stoney. You might have heard of the Stoneys. They're a famous scientific family. One of the Stoneys was George, who invented the term electron. I think he lived up in Dundrum, and there's a Stony Road up there. But anyway, there's a couple of Stoneys that did great things in science, and they went to Trinity, and they think that Alan Turing, the father of artificial intelligence, got his genius from his mother, from Trinity, if you like. Not from his dad, who was Julius, who was in the British Civil Service at the time. Okay, but of course the Irish got no credit for Turing. Turing's idea, his revolutionary idea, was that you can use a machine to solve any problem. Okay? He came up with that idea in 1936 when he was not much older than most of you guys, or maybe around the same age. He was 24, the universal machine. After that, okay, the war then interfered in a lot of things, as we know, World War II. Things picked up again in the 50s, and throughout the 60s and 70s, then you had AI researchers developing programs that could solve algebra, prove theorems, and speak, things like that. And we have seen, or some of us will, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I think was 1969, which shows that this issue has been around a long time. Kind of crazy film. You know, if you're on acid, it's probably brilliant to watch it. It doesn't make much sense otherwise. But one of the parts of it that does make sense is the robot that's controlling the ship, HAL, decides at a certain stage, he gets paranoid, he decides, I'm working for the humans. The humans are going to switch me off because he's able to lip read. He sees that they're going to switch him off, so he decides, let's kill the humans. And he then sets about killing the humans. Okay? That's 1969. They could see the dangers then. But in the past decade, we could say that's just Hollywood, that's just a film. This is becoming reality now. With AI, they're talking about introducing skills, not just boring jobs, but getting AI robots, if you like, machines, whatever you want to call them, that can pilot planes, doctors even, nurses, teachers. It all seems quite good. You know, maybe that's going to work okay, great. But the problem comes because we've created another intelligence here. Again, you can say, this goes back a while, Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, 1818, creates a new life form, Frankenstein breaks out, runs amok, goes crazy. It's the same story. We create something that we can't control. The fact that AI was stupid for a long time helped. We didn't really have to do anything. Okay, we watched the film, you smoked a joint, watched the film, 2001, so what? Okay, now we actually have to do something about it. And I've marked here in my notes, question, why would all those scientists go out of their way to shout about the dangers of AI when this is their field, their careers? Many of them would have put decades into it, going back to the 70s, 60s maybe. This threatens their funding stream. Okay, time is short, but just a quick point before I move on. President Obama likes drones. He's a politician. Why? Because they don't risk pilots' lives, number one. They cost less. A drone costs, typical drone, about $12 million. New fighter jet with a pilot in it that can crash and die and cause you problems back home costs $120 million. So sending the drones into war is a political win-win situation. Let's wipe out ISIS with very clever drones. Nobody gets killed. Hooray. But how do we control this new intelligence, this monster, this Frankenstein, this potential Frankenstein? Should we be afraid of Frankenstein? Well, maybe we should. Maybe we can control him. Where's this headed? Two schools of thought. One is that the artificial intelligence will never really know that it's actually alive, if you like. So it'll just be a bunch of software kind of communicating with other software. The other idea is that at some point, this intelligence will realize it exists. I exist. I'm conscious. Self-aware. It's a scary thought. If you can do everything, they're already doing this, build a brain with all of the stuff that you need, artificially, synthetically, organically, you can do that. You can create consciousness. We don't know what consciousness is. It's one of the mysteries of science. Nobody really has a clue what it is. I'm standing here talking to you. I know what my name is. I know I exist. I know I'm alive. So do you. But we don't understand what's going on. We've no idea. So with these machines, we don't know what we're looking for in terms of their consciousness. But it could happen. It's a big risk to take. We've got all of these benefits, but we've got risks. Final point. If we have a superintelligence, when is it going to come? Nick Bostrom, Oxford philosopher who I interviewed, said that at a certain date, they argue about the dates, he says 2045. I don't know if I'd be alive at that stage, so maybe I won't care. You guys will care though. That you will have an intelligence that will be on a level that it will be no longer able to control it. It will take control of evolution. It will shed it, we will then, if you like, have two choices, die or become part of that intelligence, that artificial intelligence, and become immortal creatures of some sort with built-in intelligence. I don't think that's a very pleasant future. We might be immortal, but it doesn't sound like much fun, and I think we need to be very cautious. Thank you.
Sean, next for the proposition we have
And Alex, as it is your first speech to the chamber, you are entitled to Nathan's rights. So if you choose to waive them, we'll all give you a round of applause. And if you choose to take them, nobody can offer you a POI, and you're probably getting a round of applause anyways.
I'll waive them, please. Thank you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, honourable judges, opposition and proposition. Just before I start, I'd like to just put to you some factual corrections. Firstly, the quote you attributed to Stephen Hawking was actually a certain Mr. Good who worked on the German Enigma codes at Bletchley Park, and he said that in 1960, and Stephen Hawking only said that in the context of the open letter that you mentioned, funny enough, the conclusion summary of which said that we need to balance the power of new technologies with the wisdom we manage it. So, my uncle gave me some advice about speaking in the HIST. He said, make sure you have a good opening and a good ending, and try and keep them as close together as possible, especially when you're a history student in a house full of scientists. But even I can tell that Frankenstein and the Paranoid Robot was due to a chemical imbalance in the brain. Artificial intelligence is a program, it's an algorithm, it doesn't have chemical imbalances. And it's hard to welcome that of which we know nothing. And it's precisely for this reason that we need to welcome artificial intelligence. And I argue this, I support this claim, by discussing how artificial intelligence can act as three people in our lives. As our doctor, this is the difference between scientists and historians. As a peacekeeper and a teacher, preferably not all at the same time. First, for the first time in human history, we are so close to universal healthcare, and not just universal, I'm talking a top standard, by coordinating resources, increasing staffing, eliminating human error in not only in surgery, in diagnosis. How many people here Google their illness before they go into hospital? You use Google, that's an artificial intelligence search. We're already using it, as my colleague said here. You know, it can tell you, I'll leave it, or, oh dear, I better go in for this one. Number two, I would argue that artificial intelligence is the best means we have to prevent a nuclear holocaust. Take, for example, AI contribution to anti-ballistic missile systems. It can track. You don't need to wait around for a button to be pressed and confirmations. Once the missile is launched, it can track its speed, trajectory, wing speeds, all this kind of thing, and actually attach to it and deflect it before the warheads are even released, send it to the ocean, into space, whatever, okay, is much more effective than any other technology we have at preventing nuclear war. And just to get back onto the drones, how many people die of collateral damage in the Middle East? Bombs are terrorist makers. Precise killings, assassinations of individuals are terrorist killers. Artificial intelligence allows us to pinpoint the exact individuals. You know, target aiming. How many people play Call of Duty? You know, you lock on. You know, you can get that guy and not be killed yourself by friendly fire and hitting your teammate. Number three, as our teacher, there is this fear that human intelligence is horizontal, and then AI is this massive line that's going to go boom and smash straight through it, and it's going to overrule us and empower us. And this is not true. This is treating AI as if it's being developed in a vacuum. What about genetic engineering? Actually, the scientist you mentioned, Nick Bostrom, I think his name was, he actually said that the doomsayers, the naysayers of artificial intelligence don't consider the impact of genetic engineering. There is no limit to human intelligence. This is a fallacy. You know, what about downloading information into your brain from AI systems? AI can analyze how we learn and help us improve. If you try and learn a language with an app, you know, I mean, people thought their brain was an app. Perhaps they'd used it a bit more. But learning languages with an app, or all these things improve your brain. And if you can genetically modify as well, imagine how intelligent humans could become. Even if human intelligence was horizontal and AI is going to smash through it, why is this a bad thing? And I'd like to use coppers as an example. Right? This revolution, the word revolution is not quite right, okay? Because it's not all going to flood onto the market all at once, and it's going to overpower us, take all of our jobs. It's going to be gradual. Think of how gradual you've gone from a Nokia to an iPhone. You know, I still have a Nokia. History student. So it's gradual, you know, so the night picks up, there's a few people, the bouncers are sort of letting in, you know, they're letting them in bit by bit. I mean, you need to welcome, the bouncers don't just say, oh, well, we'll go home then and let it go in a bit, perhaps, once I finish the analogy. The bouncers don't go home and say, oh, well, we're going to let it all go to bits now inside the club, have a good time. No, you stay there, you welcome the guest, you filter out the bad effects of AI, the ones that have drunk too much, you know, down their trousers and things like this, right? Okay? But you let in the good ones and you have a great time, you have good crack. Okay? And also, think about cars, iPhones, the Android, for example, that's exploding all of a sudden. You can recall products, you modify them, change happens gradually. The last analogy I would like to use is FIFA. Okay. I'm a history student, I don't have that many hours, I spend a lot of time at home. Okay? Artificial intelligence will always learn, it will always try and beat you, but you set the rules of the game. It will not break the rules of the game. That is the position we are in. It cannot become conscious. The problem we face is aligning the interests of AI with our own interests. That is the problem we face, and we need to welcome that problem. I mean, do we succumb to a challenge, or do we welcome it? It is coming, so we might as well welcome it. Now, I wouldn't be a history student, a proper one, at least, if I didn't finish with a bit of Latin. Aequam servere momentum. In face of danger, keep a cool head. And take solace that artificial intelligence is no match for stupidity. I urge you to go with the proposition.
Thank you, Alex. Next for the opposition, we have Grace Conway.
Ladies and gentlemen, one question before we begin. Has anyone here seen 2001: A Space Odyssey? Yeah. Case in point. I'm here tonight to prove to you in 7 minutes just one thing, and that is that artificial intelligence and all that it entails is terrifying. The teleological goal of this revolution would be to beat humanity at its own game. Modern scientists seem to have this dream that creating artificial intelligence is going to inaugurate a new area of development and advancements in the fields of medicine and infrastructure, etc., and that may be very true. But the fantasy element in this dream is that somehow humanity is going to maintain control and keep the upper hand throughout. I'm going to venture that the downfall of the AI revolution will not be a problem with AI, but a human problem, with human expenses. Creating AI is creating an artificial consciousness to a greater or lesser extent. The design is to emulate our mental processes and the function of the human brain and to surpass it, to make them more succinct than we can become biologically. This is the most likely because of behind the frightening reality that I notice about the development of the increasing tend to anthropomorphize machines as they become more intelligent. You can instill an AI with reason, logic, and a capacity to learn autonomously, but you can't instill it with human limits, things like fear, empathy, and regret. More on that later. When scientists hit stumbling blocks in the field of developing the creative and aesthetic elements of the human brain, they have come up with potentially the most ridiculous answer to this problem. Let the AI figure out the AI problems, research themselves and codify themselves, in short, to iron out their own defects because they will do it quicker and better than us. And this deep desire in humanity for everything we do to be more efficient and more perfect is what will drive us to the point of this AI revolution. No. Undoubtedly, initially it will lead to progress and advancement, but the terrifying question is, where do we reach the point where we've gone too far? And who decides this? When do we lose control of the artificial evolution of AI? Inevitably, with the creation of artificial superintelligence, a machine that is infinitely more intelligent than any human, due to both speed and quality of its thinking, there is no way of knowing what such an ASI would do or the consequences would be for us. For example, imagine one of the most significant scientific advancements of all time, the atomic bomb. Setting off the atomic bomb even once was enough to effectively end World War II and force diametrically opposed nations to unite universally in their decision to avoid nuclear warfare. Now, imagine you give an atomic bomb an artificial consciousness, a knowledge of why and how it was created. It can detonate whenever it sees fit. It can expand and develop itself. It can multiply. Our fingers are no longer on the big red button because the big red button now has a consciousness of its own. Nobody could have predicted the extent of the damage the atomic bomb would have until it went off. And with AI, we won't have that luxury. It's a process of passing the baton of advancements from biological evolution to artificial evolution. And that's the scary science bit. But there's also a huge moral aspect to this. If the scientific dream comes to an end and they manage to put the imagined reins on AI in this new utopia, where do we account for the inherent master-slave dynamic that is implicit in that? We're creating an independent consciousness to serve and advance our species, one without rights as it's not human and with no representation or sway in how it's used. Although there may be no capacity for resentment, how long will it take the AI to figure out that this dynamic is something which we've rejected for our own species, but we have hardwired into its very making and structures? I find myself asking questions like, when will the first AI rights activists emerge? When will the first AI, which will be the first AI to question humanity or to realize that, us for the inherently flawed and backward species that we are? And what about the human AI marriage equality bill? Like, these all sound ridiculous, but they're all significant milestones, which might sound like a bad sci-fi, but they're likely on the trajectory if we continue this way. This master-slave dynamic may become reversed then, is the other problem with it, when our primary function becomes to maintain the AI which sustains our development. AI will have over us, the main advantage that AI will have over us is efficiency. It will be able to run 24/7, its memory speed and performance will exceed ours, and all major breakdowns can be fixed with a trip to the workshop. Who can say that about humanity? That's not something that we have. The only thing that we can have is kind of an end in death. And this reality is really frightening because I noticed about the development, there's a serious lack of accounting for ethics and morality here. Two disciplines which from the early days of philosophy have both confounded, confused, and governed our understandings of ourselves. But, as AI develop some sort of self-awareness, an AI will develop some sort of self-awareness, but it will have no capacity to deal with purely human phenomena, such as grief, remorse, things like that. One of our most basal and comprehensible elements. How do you explain human rationality to an AI? And what consequences will those discrepancies lead to? These are the big questions that scientists need to be asking themselves. It will lead to a dichotomy between the higher aspects of humanity reflected in their AI creations and the nasty bits we didn't think to include. So speaking of nasty bits brings me to my last point, and it might sound ridiculous, but it's quite a serious point. Sex robots. Or, to put it more eloquently, AI partnership. This is probably what the people in the future activist movement will be calling it. If humans in a far-off or not-so-far-off distant future can decide which elements of humanity they wish to be included in AI consciousness, it offers them the perverse ability to create their other half. They can tailor-make a companion with all the characteristics they desire, an idealized fantasy creature of their own design that they can then, when they're tired or stressed or bored, they can just switch it off and not have to deal with it. This is the dream. This is everyone's dream. Imagine having a relationship with an off button. Finding one person in the room who wished they didn't have the power to switch off their significant other at certain points in time. And maybe I'm a cynic, but I think humanity would probably go for that over the harsh realities of living with another person. Thus, whatever way we look at it, the AI revolution is synonymous with the decline of the human race, either in influence or in terms of practicality and usefulness. For the sake of humanity, I beg you to oppose.
Thank you, Grace. Next for the proposition, I'm going to get this wrong, Arnie Philippin.
Arnie, as you are a maiden speaker and it's your first speaker in the chamber, you're entitled to maiden rights. So if you'd like to waive them, we will all give you a round of applause, and if you'd like to take them, you will not be offered, you will be offered POIs.
I would like to take them. Ladies and gentlemen,
by now the risks of artificial intelligence, as well as the range of opportunities that it brings with it, have been well established. Therefore, I want to use this opportunity here to present why the many benefits of artificial intelligence far outweigh its risks. The AI revolution, if it is not already in full swing, will come, and there is every reason to welcome and support it. Only if we embrace and stay at the forefront of it can we benefit in full from it. I would like to start by talking about some of the issues that surround artificial intelligence today and point out why none of these are valid reasons to oppose artificial intelligence in the long run. Some of the most visible examples of artificial intelligence today are self-driving cars and autopilots from Google, Tesla, and many traditional car companies. While it is true that these cars have been involved in accidents, some of them fatal, it is also true that these systems are already better drivers than us humans. Self-driving cars are already involved in far fewer accidents per million miles on the road than human drivers are. And most accidents involving self-driving cars can actually be attributed to mistakes made by human drivers in other vehicles. Cars in general are a technology that predictably causes deaths. We accept this. The benefits of cars mean that we accept a certain amount of fatalities. Artificial intelligence is a far less dangerous technology. It helps us to reduce road deaths. It is intended to do good. It is not an A-bomb. And it is surrounded by safety systems which are ready to override the AI at any moment if necessary. These are required by law. Yes, self-driving cars will have to make ethical decisions about life and death in the future. This is just one of many ethical dilemmas that will arise from artificial intelligence, as we discussed today. Others, for example, will appear when artificial intelligence will be capable of appearing as human, specifically when it will be able to appear as certain humans, for example, loved ones. While I do not want to deny these dilemmas, I would argue that it is our job as a society to shape how we use AI in the future. An ethical dilemma is, by nature, complicated. Fearing the AI revolution and rejecting AI means trying to give an easy answer to complicated questions. These are challenges to overcome, not to shy away from. We also have to keep in mind that it is human nature to object unwanted developments, and in extreme cases, to rebel against them. This means that a lot of the horror scenarios described in various works of fiction will not take place, simply because we will have intervened long before they can ever become a reality. Another objection to AI is that it replaces jobs. Robots and computers already replace human workers in many places, and advanced AI will replace many more jobs. This is an issue that, again, society has to address. The challenges we are facing here are far from easy, and we might have to accept at some point in the future that not everyone can have a job. The correct response to this, in my opinion, is to severely reshape our social systems. Protectionism has never been a successful economic policy. We need to plan ahead for these changes. The Industrial Revolution brought about changes on a similar scale. The results are achievements such as public health insurance, retirement schemes, and mandatory public schools. We should expect and plan for similar changes due to the advancement of artificial intelligence. These changes will eventually end up significantly improving our lives and offer great opportunities. I also don't want to neglect the concern that AI will overtake us someday, that we will lose control over it. The truth is that there are already a lot of algorithms that fare far better in many disciplines than humans do. As we discussed today, artificial intelligence is already beating us in everything from chess to medical diagnosis. The wish to understand these systems in full and to be smarter than them and, in a sense, be above them is completely understandable, but we simply cannot afford not to use art to improve and save lives. It is an essential tool to reduce resource consumption and therefore helps to protect our environment and our planet. Artificial intelligence is a necessary tool in today's world. Furthermore, it is safe to assume that we are far from having an artificial intelligence that reaches consciousness. We do not know when, if ever, we will fully understand how a particular arrangement of neurons in our heads leads to consciousness. I doubt that we will be able to develop conscious AI before we fully understand how our own consciousness works. We are the only ones that can make sense of the ones and zeros that a computer is shuffling around in great quantities. It will take a very long time for a computer to understand what it is and what itself means. I hope I have made it clear that I do not want to deny the problems artificial intelligence is facing at the moment and will be facing in the future. I do, however, believe that these problems are solvable and that in solving them, great opportunities arise. To finish, though, I would like to point out some of the key benefits of advanced artificial intelligence, and I would like to state why we should not only support the AI revolution, but be excited about it. As described earlier, artificial intelligence will have vastly positive effects on the economy, from increasing productivity to much more efficient resource allocation to the creation of more high-skill jobs. AI will improve our lives as well. Most of digital media today already heavily relies on algorithms to filter the content. In the future, AI could help in many more areas. One could imagine an artificial intelligence that serves as a personal therapist or as an individually tailored teacher for every child. However, the most significant benefits from AI will be seen in academia, in particular in the fields that AI relates to. Artificial intelligence has always been a driving force for the invention of new programming languages, but new developments in AI also severely impact our understanding of psychology, learning, linguistics, and language processing, to name just a few. It helps us to understand who we are as a species, what culture is and how it works, how stories transport ideas, and so much more that forms the essence of the human experience. AI research is, in its purest form, thinking about thinking. Objecting to the AI revolution means objecting to one of the most powerful keys to knowledge we have. Knowledge that comes with enormous power and that is guaranteed to bring prosperity with it. Therefore, I think this House should support the AI revolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marty. Next for the opposition, Tigran Simonian.
And Tigran, as you are a maiden, you are entitled to maiden's rights. So if you would like to waive them, we will all give a round of applause. And if you would like to take them, you can be offered POIs.
I'd like to waive them. Let me just get this over here. The Industrial Revolution led to major economic growth and an increase in standard of living for the general population. The Digital Revolution connected everybody and made the world a smaller place. These were the products of human ingenuity and were used to developing new tools to enhance our lives. But the AI revolution will be the last one that human ingenuity will ever create if we don't see the massive consequences of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you 2 points and some rebuttal will be interwoven. Firstly, on why, in many ways, humans can't keep up with this revolution. And secondly, the difference between autonomy and artificial intelligence. Technology often advances exponentially, as we've heard by a few debaters here. Yet our laws and regulations take forever to catch up. The difference between this revolution compared with the other ones that I've stated is the consequences of them. In some ways, we can control the ones that I've just mentioned, such as how fast the machine outputs and like cutting off communications to certain groups if we don't want. But the AI is different. We've never had to deal with a thinking machine before. We've never had to deal with a machine that could go potentially against our command. What I suggest is we take small steps into the future and ensure that at least we have some control over the progress and reduce the harms from it. It's often, for better or worse, the military that funds technological innovations, such as GPS and other such. It's currently the military that is pushing hard for AI. Currently, the US military is funding for more and more unmanned, self-aware, and eventually AI drones to attack foreign targets in order to reduce the casualty of human soldiers. But this increased use in drones and more artificial intelligence raises an issue about the ethics and accountability of their use.
if these machines go rogue, in other words, say they attack the wrong target and civilians get killed, who takes responsibility for that? Does the army take responsibility for that? Does the manufacturer of the drone take responsibility of that? Does the programmer who set up the algorithms for it to eventually become artificially intelligent take responsibility for that? Or do we just write the people off that it's killed as collateral damage? You can't lock up a drone for doing something like that. No one knows what the punishment for AI should be if a thing were to happen. We need a lot more time and a lot more than 7 minutes to discuss the ethics and legal repercussions of this. Because let's face it, updating the legal system is not the fastest process in the world. Even if, say tomorrow, we suddenly have a system that is as smart or smarter than us, they would still need time to learn about the morals and consequences of their actions and the difference between right and wrong, or at least the difference between right and wrong from a human perspective. If the system has the content, and although we teach it that we are the good guys and those people somewhere over there are the bad guys, it may see differently. You may see that the bad guys are a lot less equipped. You may see that they might not have heavy artillery. They might see that they're attacking from a home village that they presumably are trying to protect. Or they might be shooting up at a drone with an AK-47. You might start to question what side is truly right. Does it start to wonder, should it follow the commands? Why should I attack this person who has done no harm to me? Why should I attack this person when clearly my side has the upper hand? Does it start to question why it shouldn't be attacking us instead? By weaponizing AI, we are creating a massive security risk that we don't know, in that we don't know how the system will react to stimuli we put to it. That's why so many people, such as Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk, wrote the open letter to artificial intelligence, or as Mr. Burke would call it, the campaign to stop killer robots, to highlight the concern that people might create something that they can't control. These AI systems don't need to be at the front line in order to cause substantial damage. You can make artificially intelligent malware that can respond to attempts in stopping it, mimic human actions in order to gain access to large systems, and control industrial equipment for ransom. In fact, the US Army is also funding these projects in order to create some sort of cyber weapon. In an ever-interconnected world where large systems such as infrastructure and power systems are often connected to the internet, the danger of an AI system that could come into effect, that could infect the entire global network, becomes increasingly possible. Just look at last week, where the entire east coast of America's internet was shut down due to an attack by hackers. That was even without AI. If these people used AI systems, they could potentially take down the entire global system. But in my opinion, I think a lot of people in this debate couldn't quite, in my opinion, they don't see the difference between autonomous and artificial intelligence. We on the op agree that we can't do everything ourselves. We can test it out. But what we don't agree to is that the machines that do the jobs for us should have a conscience or sense of morality. We can program machines such as planes and cars with a set of instructions and a way to react to conditions and to learn from them. But we think it's necessary to build an intelligent machine that can think for itself. The self-driving car is autonomous. It has been programmed to learn from its surroundings, but I don't say it's sentient. It's not going to refuse your command because it doesn't like it or that it thinks it's morally wrong to do so. A factory robot are autonomous, such that, for example, if the raw materials are in different shapes, it can determine from it how to produce the product. They aren't sentient enough to, say, kill the owner because it saw the owner do something that was morally abhorrent, which it believes was wrong to do so and was justified in its killings. Taking your example of the missile defense system, I'd say that's autonomous because it's not actively thinking about why are they attacking us. It's mostly just programmed with algorithms as to how to stop it, not to have a conscience as to why it's attacking. We want and we're perfectly fine with a pseudo AI, where we hard code the algorithms, self-learning algorithms, so that it seems to have done by itself. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to look before we leap into the future. We need to take baby steps into this new revolution. Please propose.
Thank you, Tegra. Our final speaker for the proposition tonight is Catherine
Okay, so I just got here, and I wasn't quite sure what the tone of this debate was going to be, and how relevant what I was going to say is. So what I'm saying is, buckle in, I guess, because we're in this together, and it's been a lot. The last 5 minutes of that speech was a lot more serious than I thought. So I guess I'll address that before going into the rest of my somewhat whimsical speech. In terms of like weaponizing AI, like, I would much rather have a load of robots fighting each other than humans who are coerced into an army to act for a state that is failing them necessarily anyway. Dulce et decorum est patria amore is a lie. Also, robots fighting each other would be really cool. And I would rather these robots, or whatever, have some kind of sense of morality, so they would not just follow commands that their commanding officer gave them. They would not just commit war crimes because they wouldn't know any better. I think it's far better that they would be able to tell the difference. But I'm going to move on to what I originally was going to talk about and hope that it somewhat fits in terms of, like, look, humans are terrible, like, really, really bad. Like, we have no idea what is going on half the time. We bumble through our meaningless lives trying to desperately find some kind of purpose so we don't feel so alone. But there is no purpose. We wake up, we exist, we go to bed, we wake up, on and on and on. We lie awake at night scrolling through meme after meme and try to quell the rising panic of existence. Or at least I know I do. And if you look at human history, some of the biggest defining moments are war. Because we hate each other, we hate ourselves, we hate everything. It seems like we like nothing more than killing each other. And it comes from a desperate need to prove ourselves, to make ourselves relevant, and there is nothing we value more than our right to life, and nothing we value less than the right of other people to live. And we have this paradoxical existence. So, colonialism, that was a thing. We find meaning through depriving others of their humanity, of their ability to find meaning, of their ability to exist and survive and thrive. We seek ownership to fill a gaping void that exists within us. Own land, own people, own art. Strip all that is beautiful from the landscape and the people who we deem lesser than us and take us for our own. To shove it up in a great building in an act of pretense to somehow give ourselves cultural relevance at the British Museum. Okay, next thing I thought was bad about humanity. Patriarchy is a thing. A world centered around the dominance of half the population over the other half. Women forced to do unpaid emotional labour in the home with very little choice. Women not paid the same as male counterparts. Not offered the same level of education, the same right to vote, the same right to drive a car or go out in public. The scandal of it all. Rampant misogyny, where women are subjected to critiques of their appearances, catcalls, groping, Donald Trump, rape culture, and these are all bad things. Capitalism, an economic structure to the world which necessitates a lower class willing to work for less. A race to the bottom where the easiest margin to cut is the wage of the worker for the addition of their labour. A race where sweatshops are exported to the third world because the prices in Western shops, no thank you, do not factor in the human cost. Abuses of human rights, neo-colonialism, a system in which those at the bottom work and work and work and starve, and those at the top only see their profits grow. No thank you. No thank you. Down with capitalism. Okay, next thing. Racism isn't cool either. People being treated as lesser due to the melanin of their skin. We like to divide people into categories, into boxes that are easily stacked beneath those on top. We like to strip people of their dignity, of their rights, and again, on the pretense of superiority and power. But it's okay, because if you just work hard enough, eventually you'll break down walls that never should have existed in the first place. Or not. Maybe you'll be the victim of police brutality, xenophobic attacks in the streets, a racist legal system. Essentially, what I was trying to prove here is that humanity is not good, and other bad things I could think of were Crocs, fur-lined winter Crocs, global warming, and again, Donald Trump. So we take all these things into account, and humanity is pretty terrible, and I don't think we're worth saving, and I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords. Because the way in which we accrue power is by taking power away from other people. So the reason I think, no thank you, AI will be good, because no matter what world they bring, no matter what the world, no thank you, will look like when they come, whatever order they decide to impress upon humanity, it can hardly be more of a fuck up than what we currently have. Because if anything, the new boxes we will all be forced into are robot or not a robot, and maybe for once all the not a robots will have to get along and stop creating division. Even if they decide to end humanity as we know it, no thank you, I think it's actually really interesting here. Even if they decide to end humanity as we know it, like, so what? humanity, like, it destroys the earth. Humanity is currently destroying itself. And insofar as we believe the most important thing about life is being remembered after you are gone, of leaving some kind of legacy, and that's how you survive on. No, thank you. Leaving some kind of mark on the world. Well, like, the robots will presumably keep a really intense catalogue of all the stuff that we've done in, like, you know, a memory card the size of a strawberry or something like that. And also, they presumably wouldn't forget that time they killed off the greatest parasite the universe has ever known. So if we want to be remembered, and that's the only value placed in human life, then this seems pretty good to me. What's the problem? I'll take Sam.
Have you seen Terminator?
Have you seen RoboCop?
Yes.
So good. Yeah. Right, though. Like, in reality, this is kind of what I wanted to talk about in slightly more serious, but still not quite that serious terms. I think we'll probably find a way to get along with artificial intelligence, to have some kind of symbiotic relationship. And this can only lead to full international communism. Time for revolution is now. Like, think about it, okay? We are already seeing the automation of labour. Self-driving cars, automatic tills in Tesco, drones delivering packages for Amazon. You see low-skill manual labour jobs being replaced at a rate which we have never seen before. And the economy just isn't set up to deal with that amount of work being sucked out of the system. Obviously, given that the work is being done and the same amount of capital is being generated with much less labour being done on the human side, it only makes sense to institute some kind of universal basic income. From there, it's basically just a stepping stone as more and more skilled labour becomes done by more and more skilled robots to a communist utopia where no one has to work. Currency ceases to be a necessity due to the fact that our ability to produce goods goes through the roof and there's never a scarcity of anything. So essentially, I believe we will live in a post-scarcity society. And it's only once that we achieve that, once we rip power out of the hands of those who control capital, that the oppressive dominance of capitalism on humanity can finally end. We'll finally live in an equal society where everyone has what they need, and our new robot overlords will fit for us. Okay, look, humanity isn't worth saving. Even if it is, this is how we best save humanity. Bring on the revolution.
I think that was proposition. Finally, for the opposition, Cork's finest, Mr. Sam Brown.
Ladies and gentlemen, in preparation for this debate, I binge-watched all of Black Mirror on Netflix, and I've sincerely never been more ready for anything in my life. But sci-fi aside, my big inspo in this debate was Nick Bostrom's brilliant book, Superintelligence. Almost everyone in this debate has referenced it. Almost no one in this debate has cited it, and I think it falls to me now at the end of this debate to enforce some academic rigor in the College Historical Society. I'm going to be making two assumptions about artificial intelligence. I'd like to point this out about the proposition. They have no real theory of what artificial intelligence actually is. I'm sure you're very good at the theory of artificial intelligence, by the way. But they sort of assume that the future of artificial intelligence is just going to be what we have now, but better. But what I understand by the concept of an AI revolution is two things. Firstly, an intelligence which is generalizable. By that I mean that Deep Blue was great at playing chess, but can't drive cars. Google self-driving cars are no good at playing chess. A generalizable intelligence would be something that was intelligent and adept at various different domains rather than one specific domain. Secondly, it must be self-improving. This is important, right? So AI is improving now because humans are getting better at optimizing the code of the AI. An AI would be self-improving at the point where it was able to go over its own code, no thank you, and start improving it. So the important outcomes of those assumptions are as follows. Firstly, that means exponential growth, right? Because once you have an AI at human level that can go back over its own code and make it even slightly superhuman, then it's able to go back again at a better level and you get exponential growth. I could graph it, but I don't have anything like that with me. And that's some of the proposition totally forgot this debate. This is going to be incredibly fast, right? So when you have an artificial intelligence revolution, the type of unemployment you're going to see is going to happen at a scale you couldn't possibly predict. No, thank you. Secondly, they're going to be good at everything, meaning that humans will be worthless. And finally, and this is going to be important later on, they're going to be capable of affecting the world independent of human beings. So, like, I'm not going to make any assumptions about consciousness, by the way. Since no one actually knows what's going to happen, I'm just going to give you three scenarios of varying degrees of plausibility. Scenario number one, mass unemployment. Some facts. Some 90% of car crashes on roads today are caused by human error, right? self-driving cars fix that incredibly quickly at the level that they're even slightly better than humans. Moreover, they can coordinate with each other so you don't get things like tailgating. It means you don't get things like traffic jams so things are faster. That's probably good in of itself, but everybody driving a car and everybody involved in manufacturing cars is likely to become unemployed, and that's likely to happen quickly. We already have fully automated trains in Tokyo and in Singapore, so when you see people striking at Dublin Bus, spare them a thought, right? Their job is going to be gone within 40 years. No one will ever make money doing that ever again, right? But everyone in the transport industry is going to lose their jobs. Everybody who flies a plane or does anything else like that, after when they're safer and better, and after the initial anxiety, thank you, has been overcome, everybody loses their job. And yeah, there's going to be some sort of anxiety, and unions are going to resist. Unions always lose these disputes every single time in human history. And moreover, people were anxious about the invention of writing, right? People get over these things. In law, we had IBM inventing ROS, which knows all of the cases ever. So law students might probably consider that to be a problem unless they can remember all of the cases ever. And Watson, which is already significantly better than human beings at diagnoses. This is unbelievable levels of unemployment that could plausibly happen very quickly, right? So often that'll be better than us because they're good at it, but this is going to be incredibly fast, right? Welfare states are simply not adapted to this, and UBI programs, universal basic incomes, have been rejected roundly by the population of Switzerland, Finland, Canada, everywhere that's ever been asked has said no to this, right? So to Mr. Halley's point, markets are just not good at reallocating people that quickly to something literally superhuman. So the best case scenario here is that people will need to be higher skilled in future to get worse jobs on lower pay. No, thank you. That's a hellish future, but really what's going to happen is that we're going to be literally worthless. It's true that technology advances historically have generally led to more employment, but this is a falsifiable hypothesis, and I don't want to be around when this particular black swan shows up. No, thank you. Second scenario, Catherine's one here, that we're all watched over by machines of loving grace in a fully automated luxury communism. This is the absolute best case scenario. That's sort of the long term of the short term I've already discussed, right? The idea now, the best case scenario here is that people have literally no purpose, right? Because at some point all job roles are lost. When we're post-scarcity, it's the end of history, right? There's historically, we have constructed our meaning in terms of capitalist societies, in terms of having a purpose and doing that purpose. I think that, even if welfare states are adapted to this, we have no way to construct meaning in this world. I think that's generally kind of sad, no thank you, in an existential way that's not particularly impactful in this debate. But realistically, I don't think we're going to get fully automated luxury communism. Realistically, I think we're going to stick to capitalist models of production, and people are going to be allocated more into shittier jobs that they hate, that are useless, jobs that machines aren't great at, like maybe mining and things like that. But realistically, what it's going to be is most of humanity working in call centers. No thank you for when wealthy people in humanity break their Xbox or something, because that's going to be the last thing where people actually do want to hear a human voice, right? Realistically, we're still going to try to allocate people to increasingly competitive jobs and have increases in human misery. Final scenario, I have no mouth and yet I must scream. Great sci-fi book, by the way, makes this point much better than me. Thank you. And I asked Catherine, have you seen The Terminator? And I was kind of joking, but not really, right? Because the point here is that, first thing I'm going to say, based on the assumptions I've made, remember, a generalizable intelligence, secondly, a self-improving intelligence, you cannot control such a thing because it's smarter than you in a way you literally cannot conceive of. And also, if you want to shut it off, it will be able to anticipate that. If you want to try and contain it, it will get out and try to advance its purpose. No, thank you, in that way. Secondly, there is no way on earth you will be able to anticipate the behavior of such an entity. Here's why. If you give a computer a goal and tell it to do it, it will do what you do and create instrumental sub-goals if it is truly artificially intelligent. Now, you can put bounds and controls on that, but you cannot fundamentally control it because you can't control for all eventualities. Milton Friedman believed that the chair of the Fed should be a computer. No, thank you. Look, if you get a godlike intelligence and tell it to keep inflation at 2%, see how that works out for you. See what kind of instrumental sub-goals it could develop. Maybe killing everybody and have inheritance tax reduce the money supply would definitely achieve that goal. Maybe you say, get it to 2%, but don't kill anybody. Just wound people slightly and go back to the state through medicine. You're out of time. Now, this is a spoof, but the point is you literally cannot conceive of what might happen, what the instrumental sub-goals might be, and any solution that your feeble human mind can think of is wildly inadequate. The most well-known examples of the bounds we try to put in this are Asimov's laws. Briefly, harm no humans nor allow humans through inaction to come to harm, obey all humans, yada, 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 don't let harm come to yourself. First, what is human? Secondly, what is harm? In order to impose that sort of constraint, you would have to solve ethics and then encode it for a computer. But seriously, is an embryo a human? A developed AI might begin to wonder about such a question, and if we don't put very severe and strict bounds, and it might take steps to stop women having abortions. That's perfectly plausible to me if you follow my assumptions from the start of this debate. It might, if it's control of medicine, refuse human beings certain medical treatments or force others on you. These are just the first examples that come into my head. I think this is entirely plausible because we cannot control for the types of instrumental sub-goals that might arise. We might give it one objective and get exactly the worst possible scenario. For all of those scenarios, I think are bad. And they're all very good reasons to oppose. Thank you very much.